Hey, I am Dave, and you're listening to another episode of Dying to Listen podcast presented by the Disc Golf Dyers Guild. So, we have Bryan from Pipedreamer Customs here. Get ready to hear some good stories, great tips and tricks, and if you have not seen his work, I give you permission to stop this podcast and take a look. So, let's dive right in here. So, Bryan, thank you for joining us on the podcast. I feel silly for asking this question all the time, but do you play disc golf?
Yes, as much as I can. I haven't gotten to play as much lately, but let me think. It was 2020. Played over 300 rounds, and my UDisc replay at the end of the year. I was stoked. I forget the percentages, but I was up there as far as people. Number of rounds played in a year.
That's really impressive. When did you start playing disc golf?
So I first started playing around 2001. 2001. And at the time, I was into mountain bike riding. That was how me and one of my friends, we kind of got off our fat asses and decided to go and get some exercise. And as we got really into that, and then one day I was out riding around and we saw this disc golf basket, and I just drove by it really weird. It kind of intersects with the trail, and I asked my buddy, I'm like, what in the world is that thing? And he tells me, oh, well, apparently like hippies will play golf with frisbees, and that's what they throw the discs into. And I was like, that's pretty cool. So I went to go, look around, and I saw some people playing and went and talked to them. And before you knew it, I was bit by the bug, and I was big into it and had a big blast for about 4 years until life just took me and my group of friends different directions. But for those 4 years, I played a lot, and it was a blast. And then I just stopped because I'm not a huge fan of doing things by myself. Especially exercise. It helps me to have other people to keep me accountable and whatnot. And I didn't play from about 2007 up until about 2018, and that was just after about a year after my family, we relocated to Michigan from Arkansas, which is where I spent most of my formative years in my life, and went from a very active job to a work from home job where I was teaching English to Chinese kids on the internet and sitting behind a computer screen, and went from living in a tiny rural town in Arkansas where there was like 2 restaurants in the whole town that all closed at 7 or 8 o'clock, and then moved to fast food and put on about 100 pounds in a year. And then I decided, hey, I got to get off my butt and go get to doing something, and rediscovered disc golf. The town that we lived in, there was a little 9-hole course in the middle of the park. And so we decided to go out there and start throwing around, and I got bit by the bug again. And then I was very fortunate living in Michigan. There's just so many, the course density there is great. So many fun courses and good community, good folks, and I'm enjoying it here too.
That's awesome. That's awesome that you got off your butt and did some exercise. I like the disc golf because it's exercise, but you really don't realize it's exercise.
Right. You don't realize it's exercise until, after you get back in your car and drive back home, and when you stand up out of your car, that's when I feel it the most. I can play 2 rounds. There's even been a few times I played 3 rounds in a day, and I'm like, oh, I'm great, until I sit down and my body gets stiff. And then, oh yeah, I'm not under 30 anymore.
Yeah. So do you have any discs from like the 2001 era?
I do. I don't bag them anymore, but I have a Pro Birdie. That was my first putter. I still keep that as a kind of little catch disc because it's soft and rubbery. And I think I have a Viper, a Whippet, a Skeeter, a Stingray, a Wolf, an old Wraith. This was one of my early lotion bed attempts. But yeah, I've had a couple people try to buy this from me, but no, I'm keeping that one.
So what got you into disc dyeing?
So I was on Reddit about the beginning of the pandemic, and I was happy to kind of pivot away from other social media networks and discovered the disc golf there shortly after I started playing disc again. And then I saw a post by Chase of Greasy Dyes, one of his lotion dyes, and wow, that's so cool. How did he do that? And in the comments thread of that post, someone linked to the disc dyeing subreddit. And so I went there and then found, that's where I found T. Diddy. And then it was on from there. I watched a couple of his videos and I could do this. I could totally do this.
Do you remember the first disc that you attempted to dye?
Yes, I do. It's a lime green AVR that I did a shaving cream burst on, and it came out really good. My second through fifth discs, not so much, but that first one, man, it came out so well, and I was, wow, that's great, exactly how I was hoping for, and it kind of bit me like just the disc golf bug in general did.
What were the discs that you dyed afterwards? What'd you do with those?
Well, so I started out dyeing all of my throwers, and then I was starting to get some decent results, and then a couple of my buddies that I played disc with were like, hey, why don't you take my disc home? You can practice on those. And then it didn't take too long before somebody was like, hey, I'll pay you to do that if you do something like that there on one of my discs. And so away we went.
That is awesome. What dye methods have you all tried?
I honestly can't think of many that I haven't tried at this point. Let's see. I started with shaving cream, then went to lotion, and then clear glue. That was kind of where it really sunk its meat hooks into me. And once I figured out how to put do glue beds, and wow, that's so cool. And yeah, Floetrol, I'm competent. I understand how it's supposed to work. I don't get results anything near like what some of the other folks that are really good with that medium do. I do like to do like split cup pours. These are a lot of fun to do. And hand painting, I mean, that's not really my thing. I'm trying to learn, but it's not in my wheelhouse, I should say.
Yeah.
Spin dyes. I like to do spin dyes. I don't do much aside from spin undersides of rims, like JL dyes. I can't mess with that kind of the lollipop swirl. That stuff is just insane. But there's really not. If there's a medium that I haven't tried yet, detergent, I haven't done detergent yet. I should really try detergent sometime.
Right on. So you have amazing work, and I was trying to think of your signature style, but I want to hear from you. Do you think you have a signature style that if someone saw that disc, they're like, yeah, Pipedreamer Customs did that? What would it be?
I would say probably a clear glue bed. Because that's if there's somebody else out there that was doing it before T. Diddy, like he was doing, I forget what he called, like a nebula background or something like that, but it was different than what I started tinkering around with. Mm-hmm. And if there's somebody else out there who was doing clear glue stuff before me, I'd like to talk to them. But that was what kind of just grabbed my attention. Like this, it calls to me. And if I'm defaulting on a background, like if I do a stencil dye, I default to a clear glue bed dye.
Yeah, I've been recently getting into clear glue beds. I feel like your progression was like mine. I first did the shaving cream. Then I did lotion, then all of a sudden glue bed, and like, wow.
Yeah. And it's relatively easy, especially for somebody like me that has no formal artistic training. And I just kind of watch videos and, I do that. I put dye, here's how I mix the dye, and here's what I put it on, and here's how I move it around. And Easy peasy.
When do you think you tried your first glue bed or clear glue bed dye?
Oh gosh, I guess it was probably April or May of 2020. I dyed my first disc in April of 2020, and it didn't take me too long to get to less than a month. I feel like if I went back and looked at my camera roll, I could tell you exactly when. But
so, is there any tips or tricks or things that you learned from doing the clear glue bed, or any styles or things that you like to do within those patterns?
To me, the biggest thing about doing clear glue beds is not all dyes react the same way on the bed. And you've got to figure, like, I kind of have what I consider like S tier colors, things like fire red. Let me think of some other color. That's just the very first one that pops. It stays in a nice, dense colored dot on the bed, and it doesn't spread out or diffuse down into the bed. But there's other colors that, but to me, it's all about having the right mixture of colors that don't do the weird, like some of, especially the prochemical blues, like bright blue, flag blue, all of them. I mean, they end up looking fine after you swirl them around, but it doesn't stay in a concentrated dot of color on the top of the bed, sort of like, it's like quick quote yellow worm dip. There's no substitute for it. It is the best of the best for yellows on glue beds. And but anyhow, yeah, I feel like it's about getting the best colors and then putting the ones together that are that go together well. And for me, I did that by one of my friends who is artistically inclined. She told me, get you a color wheel and sit and look at this color wheel and then think about nature. And so anytime I'm trying to think of I started with my favorite color scheme was like a space nebula with pinks and blues and purple and black and gray and fuchsia, and mix those together, and it makes such a cool looking spacey sort of effect. And but
what dyes do you use, and what is your mixture that you mix those dyes to put on the bed with?
So I use almost exclusively prochemical and dye products, and I will take these bottles here. I forget what the HDPE bottles, I believe they are. The 2-ounce bottles work just fine. I don't closely measure, but usually around a teaspoon per ounce of acetone, a teaspoon of dye per ounce of acetone, or alcohol if you want to do spin dyes or hand painting or something. But to me, I've noticed a difference if I don't put a whole bunch in. I mean, I could fill it halfway up, but it's not going to make that what's the solvent carry any more solute. There comes a point where it's maximum saturated, and I've gotten to the point where I'll take a mixture after it's mixed up, set it on my my sealing mat over here, and let it get warm, and that helps it steeps it, sort of like tea or coffee. And after that, then I'm good for probably a month or two until I have to remix it again.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like the least amount of dye that you can use is in clear glue beds, because it's just like drop, drop, drop. Unlike, say, Floetrol, where you got to dump a bunch of stuff in Floetrol.
Yes. Yeah. Floetrol, that's the thing. One of the things that keeps me from delving into it more is because it's so intensive on medium and dye, and it's just a challenging medium to work with. But
do you want to give a brief explanation of how you do your clear glue beds from start to finish?
Okay. So the first thing I would highly recommend, I'm going to kind of pivot over here so you can see my turntable. I built this with my dad. It was actually the last project that I got to do with him before he died. But everybody should have a turntable because it makes building and turning you put your bed on the platter of the turntable, center it, put your glue in there, and then and how much is honestly dependent upon how domey is the disc that you're dyeing, how much is it going to sink down into the bed. And then I take my glass droppers like these. I got these from old vape juice bottles from a few years ago, repurpose, recycle, all that good stuff, reuse. Yeah. And then just suck up some of the dye, put it into, drop it. I like to do a series of small dots. Like I'll typically start right in dead center, put a dot, whatever color. I tend to stick with 3 color groups, and then I'll put my first color, then put dots around that color, and then take a different color and do that, and then cycle back to the first one and put dots around that. And now there's some colors, like I mentioned earlier, that they like to kind of spread and they don't stay in a tight little spot on the bed. But if you're dealing if you put one color in on top of a dot that you already put there, it works sort of like a holding cell, and it keeps it from spreading out and diffusing as much. Sometimes after I put down all of my color, the tendency to spread is a little bit less. So once my bed is full with my first layer of color, then I can go back in and put in some of the other colors that I like how they look, but I don't like how they react and spread things out and distort patterns and stuff like that. And it holds them in place a little bit better. But I'll put my dots of color on. Then most of the time I swirl it with a toothpick. I'll just different shapes, different patterns, and then I'll go back around and use this little syringe. Daddy Mac, Chris Tanis turned me onto this. At first I was just using a straw, but having this larger bore cylinder up here and channeling it into the small, you can move more air that way. And so I'll kind of blow things around. I tend to like to take my pattern and push it back in a little bit, and then maybe do some more rakes or directional. Then I'll use a straw for more precision work and just kind of get it and blow on it and push the things around. And sometimes I put the straw over the top of the bed and kind of make like a pattern and blow down hard, and it distorts the pattern a little bit. It adds a different texture to it for me. And then put the disc in the bed.
Awesome. So after you put the disc in the bed, how long do you leave it in the bed, and do you use heat?
Like for your softer star like plastics, like Star, Casta, K1, Trilogy, Gold Line, etc., 24 hours is sufficient. There's other people that say that 12 hours is even that's fine. Every now and then I will use heat. I've actually been experimenting a little bit with that recently. But the thing with the heat is if you get it too hot, I've noticed that some of the fine feathery detail in the swirls, that if it gets too hot, that will kind of bleed together. And if sometimes if you have colors like orange and purple that mix to make brown, if you put them by each other in the bed, I could swirl it around, and if I don't put heat on it, it'll come out nice, distinct orange, purple, or whatever the case may be, and it doesn't go to brown town. But sometimes with heat, it will. I've noticed it less with the lamp, with the heat lamp, and like a 2-hour set. I've tried to get it around the surface of the disc around 100 degrees or so, and just let it sit there for 2 hours. And then let it soak overnight. But for like your Clearish Champion, your Z Plastic, Champion Plastic, stuff like that, I would give it at least 48 hours. And probably at this point, give it some heat, because that stuff is hard to get good, vivid color into.
Yeah, so I mentioned this on other podcasts, but I'm impatient, so I basically nuke everything. I use a heat lamp that's probably maybe 9 to 12 inches away, and I let it on there for 30 minutes. Then I let the disc rest for like another 30 or an hour, and it's done. But what I haven't really experimented with, and I haven't noticed, was what you were explaining, the more non-crisp lines. I haven't really noticed that yet. So, but I'll definitely keep an eye.
One thing I should add to that, whenever I was noticing that, it was whenever I was leaving my beds on a seedling mat. And there's been some discussion with other disc dyers that it's very different heating it from below, which creates convection currents inside of the medium, and it makes it act differently than if you've got the heat coming from above, just getting the top layer of the medium and just the disc. And I haven't noticed the problem as much with the heat lamp. So, and I honestly don't do it a lot. I'm largely a proponent of I like to treat disc dyeing sort of like barbecue. Like you can't rush. Yeah. If you're gonna smoke a brisket, you're gonna be busy for a while, and you just gotta let it. One thing I thought whenever I first got into disc dyeing is that your disc has one opportunity to absorb the color that you want, and I totally understand the desire. Oh God, I can't wait to pull it. I'm ready to see how it turned out. But that's one of those things where I just think, be patient, let it have its time. Give it its best chance to get the best ideal results that you want, and then clean it off.
That is a great analogy, honestly, and probably why I never got into that.
Well, and another thing I've noticed, a con for using heat with glue beds is it makes them a little bit harder to recycle. Jory Reed of Jory's Fly Dyes, he convinced me to jump on the recycling glue bandwagon, and I found that it works. But if you use a heat lamp on it, you'll get that dried out layer of glue. It kind of sticks to it, and it's thicker. It definitely seems to remove more of the liquid content out of the glue, and it just makes it more of a mess. So I just I'll put it in bed and let it sit for a day or two and come back to it. And maybe I'll give it heat at the end if I'm really concerned about certain colors not wanting to come through.
Yeah, I haven't reused glue beds yet, mainly because I just haven't dyed that many discs, or the discs that I do dye are just so infrequent that it just doesn't make sense. But I definitely want to give reusing it a try. And how do you repurpose or reuse your glue?
Okay, so what I do is after, first of all, if you can see, I have my shelves where I let my beds rest. Whenever I put the bed up there to soak, I'll put another bed on top of it to trap the moisture in so it doesn't want to dry out. And for usually round 2 or 3 of reusing a bed, I just leave it there in the bed and try to use the same color palette that was in it before. There's some colors like the neon cerise pink and the royal purple specifically that will leach out into the glue a little bit more, and that makes it a little more difficult to reuse the glue. But after about the second or third use and it's getting pretty thick, then I have a big oil funnel like you would for your car, and just hold the bed over top of or take an empty glue jug, put the funnel into it, scrape the glue into the funnel, and let it drizzle down in there. And then once it's about 2/3 full, then put a little bit of water into it, hot water, and shake it the crap out of it. And it's that whole re-agitating the glue and hydrating it. And then I just let it sit for a couple of days. All the bubbles that you see, and it'll rise up and they'll pop. And it's more challenging because it's definitely not clear glue at that point, but if you have a well lit working area, you can put drops of, you can see your colors whenever you're putting it onto the darker glue. But I have noticed that watering it down, it changes how some of the there's some colors that did just a little bit of spread before, but now they'll spread even more. So I have to be judicious about what I use the recycled glue on.
Interesting. And speaking of glue, what type of glue do you like to use?
So I like to use the colorations, the stuff from Discount School Supply. I remember whenever I first got into this, it was like $6 a gallon on their website. And I was like, wow, what a steal. It works just fine. And it's a whole lot cheaper than $20 for the Elmer's clear glue. And then I made a video for T Diddy about clear glue beds. And then all of a sudden we started noticing we couldn't get clear glue anymore from that supplier. And then whenever it came back, it was significantly more expensive. And now it's to the point where it's about it's just a couple of bucks more to go get the Elmer's from Walmart. You don't have to go drive and hunt around Michael's clear glue is excellent glue. It works well. I think it's only like $12 or $13, but they've had supply chain issues. I went to a couple of stores in the last year and they never have any in the store. And so I got lucky there. They were running a special on Discount School Supply and I ended up buying 50 gallons of it. And I've still been working on that hoard for about the last, 6 months or so. And I've got about, 6 gallons left.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
I always wonder with these industries, like all of a sudden one of their products is selling really well. And I'm like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Like, why is all our clear glue bed or
clear school glue?
Yeah.
And then there was a review on their website. Somebody left a review. It dyes discs really well. I'm sure it's somebody that's there to just buy it as a school supply. Dye what?
Like the marketing department's like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. Now they figure out what they have, and now it's not as cheap as it was.
Yeah. A few other questions. What do you contain the bed in? Like what?
I use an ultimate disc, but first of which I like to use the white because, well, they're not terribly white anymore, but I mean, it's a nice backdrop so you see true color as I'm building my bed. Mm-hmm. But I've also discovered that these little, it's like I got them for $1 at Walmart. These Michael O'Hearn of Lucky Dyes, and Chase of Greasy Dyes, they both use these as beds, and they're the perfect size. A disc just fits very well into it. It's a lot less wasteful. You're not just throwing extra medium down the drain. But those are typically what I use, and I will also use Pyrex deep dish pie plates. For whenever I'm doing pours, I will typically put my bed in that, and I use these for a couple of things. Like, here's the bonus content. So, whenever I lotion paint things, I make this little terrarium like this. I'll put the bed on the bottom and this on the top, and then just put my disc that I've lotion painted inside this. Put the dome over the top of it and set it over here. I'll either put it under my heat lamp for a couple of hours or put it over on my seedling mat overnight. Just let it sit there, and it traps the humidity in there, because if people don't know, whenever your medium dries out, it is no longer transferring color, so you got to keep it moist. And Randy Drennan turned me onto that little bit of knowledge, and then I thought, hey, this will work great, and it serves me very well. So yeah, ultimate discs, these, and pie plates. Those
awesome.
Are my beds.
Yeah, I usually stick an ultimate disc with a wet paper towel underneath it when I do my lotions to keep the moisture in. Awesome.
Interesting.
So how many discs do you dye in, say, a week, a month?
It honestly depends, because there's sometimes, like, if somebody wants me to do a stencil die for them that's quite intricate, I could spend 6-8 hours on one disc. But there's a couple of shops that I die discs for, and a lot of those are fairly simple stencils, and so I can mow through. I think the most I've dyed in a week was probably about 75.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was pretty short order. A shop that had a booth set up at a tournament, and they wanted to have some dies to sell, and they're like, if we rush these to you, can you do them real quick? I'll do my best. And then I was able to do it. So
that's crazy.
But on a typical day, I guess I would have to say I could probably do like a moderate stencil with a background. Usually it's still hard to quantify because it goes over days at a time. Typically my workflow is Monday is stencil cutting day. That's where I will figure out logistics day. Okay, these are the discs that I'm going to use, and this is the stencil I'm going to put on them, and I have to measure out my diameters and all this stuff and figure that out and put my stencils on. And then Tuesday it will be hot dipping day, and then Wednesday will be background day, whether it's glue beds or lotion beds or whatever the case may be. And then Thursday or Friday will be lotion painting day after I peel off all the vinyl. So it's really hard to say. 3 to 4 a day. That's my best guesstimate.
I like how you split up the days. Yeah, it's hot dipping day.
Yeah, well, I actually get excited about that now.
It makes perfect sense. Honestly, if you're doing a batch, a bunch of stuff, one day you do this, the other day you do the other stuff.
Yep.
So the other thing that I like your work is your stencils that you do. How did you get into doing stencils?
I discovered Keith Limpa's work. He was the first one that made me think, wow, that's so cool. And I thought at first, I'm very comfortable with knives. This stays at my table with me all the time. And I thought, I'll just hand cut some stencils. And I sat down and with a compass and a ruler and drew out this heptagram that Tool uses as part of their backdrop behind them. And it took so long to sit and draw all that out. And then Keith was like, dude, just get a Cameo. And then I did. That was what I got with one of my pandemic stimulus checks. Money well spent. I'm like, I'm buying a Cameo. And then, yeah, I got that. And it just once I figured out how to use it, I guess if I had to zero in on one type of die that I like doing the most, it's probably stencils because they're so personal. You can do exactly what you want to do with it. And I mean, yeah, you can do that with beds too, but it's just a different level of personalization.
I totally agree with that. And I know you said you're not necessarily a visual artist, but with the stencil stuff, that's a visual thing. So where do you get your stencils, and or do you manipulate any of the stencils that you get to customize it even further?
So I've, first of all, was on the Disc Golf Dyers. On the Facebook group, there's a huge dump of stuff there. Then 777 Customs, whenever he got into the UV printing, he sort of made this stencil dump of like 500 some different pictures. And there's so many projects in there that I just, after he posted them on Facebook, I was like, just downloaded all those and put them in my folder. And I haven't really done a whole lot of constructing my own stencils from scratch. I'm starting to understand that a little bit better and how to use Silhouette. And I've been starting to work with Inkscape because I'm too cheap to pay for a subscription to Adobe's and all of the stuff that they want.
Perfectly fine about that. So
yeah, but and just Google image search. And then once I discovered Vector Q, I don't think it's available for anybody but Apple users. But if you need to convert a picture into a usable stencil, that's the way to go.
Recently found out about that as well, and that is a good alternative for people that do not want to pay for Adobe stuff.
Right. Yeah. And I'm hoping Bill Hammond, he's kind of gotten my interest piqued in trying to get a tablet and do my own tracing and make stencils. And we'll see.
Yeah, it's another thing that you got to learn and do. I do have an iPad and an Apple Pencil, and it takes some time to learn and to actually do, but you can get some good results and custom results.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for.
I remember the Halloween disc that you did for the tournament that you had, and that was a Freddy Krueger one, and that I really liked and was one of my favorite discs out of that group.
Thank you.
What I really liked the background, the stencil, and the shading that you did with the coloring inside there as well.
Yeah, that's been new adventures for me, like that. Learning how to shade, what colors to use, and where to put the darker colors, and where to leave things lighter so that you don't paint yourself into a corner by painting it too dark before you need it to be a different color, if that makes any sense.
How do you do your shading?
Lotion painting. Oh. I'll use I use a whole lot of these. They're called nail tips, I think. I got them from Sally Beauty Supply, and a lot of times I'll just sit here and kind of shade wherever I need to shade. I'm starting to, I just recently got some more bottles to keep my dye mixes in, and I'm mixing up more denatured alcohol because that's a far more forgiving medium for hand painting and shading, and it's more subtle.
Do you have any favorite discs that you like to dye and or plastic type?
Discs, I guess I would have to say something flat. Those are easier to get stencils on cleanly. Stencil art discs that are translucent or I can see through for like whenever I center the stencil, those are so much easier to get centered up right. But as far as just how like plastic takes dye, the Trilogy Opto X Glimmer, there's Opto X. I don't remember if it's Glimmer or Chameleon, but there's a pearl. I haven't seen a lot of it, but oh my gosh, that plastic! It looks so beautiful out in the sun, and it seems to be one of the ones that fades the slowest over time. Also, there's that new Trilogy. What do they call it? The Gold X or Fusion X. That stuff is very vivid, and it doesn't seem to fade very quickly. Oh, and Prodigy 750 plastic. It's very hard, very slick. I'm a sucker for the plastics that have the really slick high gloss. And Castoplast was like that until I figured out that it just fades so quick.
Are you a person that likes to wipe a stamp or keep the stamp?
It depends. If it's a cool stamp, keep it. But others, they're just in the way of me making it into something far greater than it currently is. So, yeah, there's some cool stamps that I've seen that I like to work with, especially like, I don't have it right here, but Thought Space Athletics. How can you not love their foils? They're incredible discs and fun to work with. It gives you a good jumping off point. Like, look at the color. Okay, the color of your plastic and the foils. Okay, start from there.
If you do keep a stamp, do you mask off any part of the stamp at any time?
Yes. Well, again, it depends, but I do quite a bit, and I like to use contact paper. This is the best thing that I found. This and a X-Acto knife. That for me, that's far easier and more effective than like a glue mask, because a couple of things about glue masks that I've noticed. Elmer's, you better let it really dry, because if it's even a little bit wet, that dye will leach through and it will stain it underneath. But if you let it dry too much, then it's gonna damage. It could damage the stamp. Now there's also, let's see here, Gorilla brand wood glue. This is the best thing that I found whenever I need to use a glue mask. But again, if you let it dry to a full cure on a disc that has a fragile foil, forget about it. It will wreck it.
Interesting. Yeah, I've just started dabbling into glue mask. I haven't used any contact paper or, the contact stuff masks yet. Are there any discs that you notice that the stamps are more fragile than others?
Oh, God. Anova, Trilogy, any of those foil stamps, Discmania, not as awful. But mostly any kind of foil stamp. Oh, yeah, Discmania, especially on the Neo line. Those, if you look at the foil wrong, it crumbles. And there's just not a whole lot you can do. The contact paper and whenever you're ready to peel it off, hold it under hot running water and very slowly peel it off. And that's the best way I found. But there's even some, it doesn't matter how hard you try, it's going to wreck the stamp sometimes. And sometimes they won't. So you never know.
Do you have a must-have die accessory that you cannot live without?
Heat gun. Well, first of all, if you don't have a turntable, I would consider a turntable fundamental equipment that you should just have from the get-go. But if you have a turntable, most definitely a heat gun for several reasons, especially if you're into stencils, because getting the stencil on cleanly without wrinkles and all of that, the heat gun and a little spatula like this, it makes life so much easier whenever you're weeding stencils. It's gotten to the point for me that weeding warm vinyl is one of those fine pleasures of life, like the smell of rain and all. It goes up in there with that, because if there's something not too intricate, because if you heat it up too much and it's a really intricate, it'll pull all of it up. But you eventually figure out the right temperature, and it's just like a hot knife going through butter, and it just feels right. And it makes weeding a stencil so much easier. And then if you want to lotion paint something quickly, I would only advise such for like smaller areas. Like if you're trying to do a larger chunk of a background, for me, it's harder to get you have to heat the disc evenly. And if you don't, you'll have some areas that look a little bit darker and others that are a little bit lighter. I would avoid it for the stuff like that. But for smaller detail that you're just trying to touch up, oh man, this is great. You just lotion paint it on and get it hot. I keep my hand on the underside of the disc directly touching the point of the plastic that I'm heating, so I know when it's getting too hot. And whenever it gets to the point where I about have to set it down because it's too hot, I'll just let it sit for about 5 minutes and go wash it off. Ta-da!
Well, an interesting technique that I've never heard of for lotion painting. It
works well. Keith Limpa turned me onto that. I saw him doing it at when we did Die Academy at DDO 2 years ago. I saw him using a heat gun working on a Gyarados die, and watch him, and he just do a little bit of detail at a time, and then sit there, hit it with the heat gun, let it sit, and then go wash it off, go right back to it. I'm like, wow, that sure beats letting something sit for 24 hours.
Absolutely. For when you use contact paper for the masking, do you use heat at all? And have you noticed any bleeds from that?
I've noticed some bleeds if you have a deep depression from the hot stamp. Like there's some, I guess it probably has something to do with not a good match between the hot plate and the dome of the disc. And the ones where you have those depressions from the hot stamp, it can sometimes let bleeds under, but it's not a huge problem.
Gotcha. And do you use heat with the contact paper?
I don't, not to put it on. I mean, I'll use it on something that I'm using heat on and it doesn't damage the stamp.
But you don't use it like you would vinyl to kind of seal up the edges.
I don't count on it. I wouldn't trust it with a hot dip or anything of the sort. But if I'm just masking off a stamp, it'll typically be fine.
So for your spin dies, you have I know you mentioned you made something, but did you actually make a turntable or did you have an existing one?
Well, so I have an actual turntable that I use for spin dies. This turntable that I built, I've had bad luck with turntables. I'm on my fourth one. The first one that I bought, I was trying to cut the little spindle off, and I was like, "Oh, an angle grinder will make short work of this," and it sure did. And it got the little nub super hot, and it melted it, and it just kind of fell inside, and it got a wobble. And I'm like, "Well, crap." So I got me another turntable and decided, hey, I want to try and do some of those lollipop swirls. I wonder what will happen if I put it on a dimmer switch. And I put the turntable on a dimmer switch, and then I smell burnt electronics. I'm like, well, shit. So apparently you're not supposed to put a dimmer switch on certain types of turntables. So I burned that one. And finally I was like, you know what? What would happen if I mounted a turntable platter on top of a ceiling fan motor? I wonder if it would work. I mean, it works functionally as like a lazy Susan for building beds on, not for spin die. It's got a little bit of a wobble in it.
Do you have Dave's spin die jig rig?
I have. So that's another sad story. I had one, and then I left it sitting on the dashboard of my truck for a couple of hours one day when it was hot, and I come back outside and it was all sagging and melted. And so now I just I haven't bought another one yet, but I just ended up drawing. Just turned my turntable on and just put a Sharpie on about the area where I need to have line my disc up, and it doesn't take me too long to center it. Less than a minute.
Yeah, well, if you like another one, I can send one for free.
I would dig that. Yeah, because I liked having it. It was great, and then I messed up, and I should have thought about it. I mean, I know that 3D printed stuff doesn't take heat well, so.
It happens. It's okay. And speaking of fail stories, is there any fail stories that are memorable or any big fails that you've had?
Oh, God, a couple. Well, so one time. So first of all, let me preface this by saying Floetrol dies are my, what's the word? Kryptonite. I've tried and tried and tried, and I can get really nice looking bits. It's just the transfer to the disc that gives me fits. And this was before the heat lamps became much of a thing. I thought to myself, what would happen if I put my oven on its lowest setting and I just leave it in there for a little bit? And I put the disc in there, kind of forgot about it for about 3 hours, came back to it, and it's bubbling, and oh, this isn't good. And then I ended up spilling some on the heating element as I was getting it out of the oven, and it stunk to high heaven. My wife was not happy with me. But I learned my lesson after that. Don't put anything in the oven. It's just not unless you get one of those fancy dehydrator ovens. Let me think. Other fails. Word of wisdom. If you're ever painting with bottles of worm dip, there was one time that I was sitting here, just holding a bottle, and I don't know what it is that causes me to do this, but sometimes my hand will just twitch. And I'm sitting here holding the almost full bottle of black worm dip. I'm sitting here working on the disc, and my hand just kind of twitches, and then this big wave of black worm dip comes out and just sploosh all over the disc that I'm working on, all over the table that I'm working on. Fortunately, I had the foresight to have a junky tablecloth that I bought from Walmart just to save me from instances just like that. But aside from ruining that disc, I honestly feel like I don't repeat a lot of my mistakes outside of Floetrol. I feel like that's why I've been largely successful in disc dyeing, is because that's honestly one of the most important things, is being analytical about, okay, are these the results I wanted? If yes, good. Okay, why? Like, why do you, what specifically is going on that you like? Is it this certain color that's popping, or this one color that's usually weak? Being analytical about, okay, but in both a positive and negative way. Because there's a great phrase that I love. Positives come and go, but negatives accumulate. And it's really easy to sit and pick yourself apart over, oh, I don't like how this turned out or how this turned out. You have to give yourself credit for the things that you do well, but you also have to be able to look, okay, I'm not happy with this. Why did this happen? And do your best to try to not do it again.
That is some really great advice. And that's really how you learn, is you make mistakes. And like you said, you see, okay, that turned out really great. Why? Or that got fucked up. Why? So you just keep doing and learning from your mistakes.
Yes. Fuck around and find out. I mean,
yes.
It's if you don't know what you're doing, fuck around and find out. You could. There's so much to be said for the experience of doing something. Another great phrase that I like: you don't get better at things by not doing them. And there's so many people that get frustrated because they pick up something new and they're not excellent at it immediately. It's, you gotta suck. You have to. Everyone has to go through that stage. Because learning not to suck is one of the most important skills of not just being a disc dyer, anything that you do, any applied skill that you're trying to improve at, it's so important. And there's people that, well, I don't really want to do that again because I didn't do very well on it last time. Okay, well, I get that, but it's not a reason to dissuade you from doing something because you've made mistakes on it before.
You have to suck to get better.
Yes, you really do. And there's no way around it.
I'm going to ask this question, which we kind of are answering it, but is there any tips that you would give any new disc dyers and or some seasoned veterans out there?
First of all, your workspace. You need to have a place where you can feel, where you can, if you make a mess, it's not the end of the world. Like when I first started doing this, I was doing it all in our kitchen. We did not get our deposit back when we moved out of that place. But learning how to protect your work area, having a flat and level workspace, that's a huge thing. Whenever I'm turning my beds, like spinning my beds around and working on them, if that bed is not flat and level, whenever I turn it, that the medium slides and the pattern moves, and having a flat and level workspace is so important. And learn ways to use heat. I'm not the hugest proponent of heat, but I mean, like lotion dyes, or whenever I lotion paint something, I put it in my little dome contraction I showed you, and 2 hours later, after it's under a heat lamp that's about 20 inches away, it's done and ready to be washed off. So learn to use heat. Protect your workspace. Let me think of something for season. Try something new. Like get outside of your comfort zone. Outside, even though I suck with flow trawl, I still try like this. Hold on. I have it. I just have a recent one of my fails up here. I was so excited. I must have left it downstairs or something. But don't be afraid to try something new. And like these split cups. Whenever I got a split cup and did it, I'd only seen people do like pour paintings on Instagram, but they're so cool and it's fun to play with. That's another tip for seasoned disc dyers. Have fun with what you're doing, because there's a lot of people that have turned disc dyeing into varying degrees of a side hustle, and that's great. I mean, I could not. I don't know how deep I'm going to go into this, but over the last year, if I had not had this hustle of dyeing and selling discs, I have no idea how I would have managed the last year. For those of you that don't know, my dad died 2 years ago and my mom died last year. And whenever my mom died, she died from COVID. And I made several trips back and forth from Michigan to Missouri. And if I hadn't been doing that whenever my mom died, I have no idea how I would have been able to manage handling this estate and coming and cleaning out this house. I was so fortunate to have a job that I could do that, wherever I can create the space, and is the most important. Oh, that backtracking, your climate control. If your dye lab has wide swings in temperature, be careful, because there's whenever I first moved into this house, it was in the middle of summer and we didn't have the AC going yet, and I was like, I gotta dye some discs, and then I didn't think I used heat, but I sure did. I came back the next day and it was super overexposed. I'm like, well, so I need to get this AC going very quickly. So yeah, doing something simply for the joy of it is so important, because whenever I've dyed as many discs that I have in the last year, it becomes more about the process and completing orders than enjoying the experience and having fun. And I tend to, like, if I'm making a stencil with a background, I'll usually default to a glue bed, but sometimes, put a split cut pour behind it, do a lotion bed, try a Floetrol pour, shaving cream burster, whatever the case may be, but keep experimenting, because that, once you lose sight of that initial joy of discovery that you get when you first got into it, it's really easy to get lost in the weeds, and it gets become more of a chore and a grind than a pleasurable experience.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Is once it starts becoming work, it doesn't become fun anymore. So try not to turn it into work and still have fun with disc dyeing.
Yeah.
What does disc dyeing mean to you?
Disc dyeing mean to me? It's a way that I can be expressive about a variety of things. I seem to have a little bit of, I'm not going to go deep into the specifics because I don't want to discuss some topics, but something will happen in the news and I'll just get this random idea. Like, I made a caricature disc of Vladimir Putin in drag, and being able to express myself through art, and being able, whenever somebody messages me and it's like, hey man, I really like it if you could get this, put such and such on a destroyer for me or whatever. And then whenever I love the process of coming up with customs for people, like floating ideas by them. Okay, how about this artwork? What do you think of this? And okay, what colors do you want in the background? And getting people exactly what they want, and then then looking forward to how many people message me after they get the disc, like, wow, looks even better in person. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going for. That's just it provides warm fuzzies that I didn't really know that I was missing out on by not being into some form of visual art. Like, to me, I've always been a musician. I was a band dork all through high school and college. And here's a fun random fact about me. I play the bassoon. If you happen to know what a bassoon is, I play a mean bassoon. But that was always my outlet for artistic expression. And anytime I ever tried something else, like tried drawing stuff, it just looked terrible. I mean, that's not my drawing. Freehand drawing is not my forte. But then I find something that I can play around with, and it feels like fun, and you create something beautiful. And so that's what it means to me. It's not really a concise answer, but it's hard to give a concise answer to something like that.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear everybody's story of what disc dyeing means to them, and it's just fascinating. And speaking of the custom dyes that you do for people, have you had any weird or unique ones?
Yes, I just had one a couple of weeks ago. Someone wanted born to shit, forced to wipe put onto a disc with skull and crossbones, given a double finger. I'm like, okay, yeah, I can do that. I wouldn't really call it weird, but the coolest commission that I've had. There's a group of guys, a group of friends that have known each other for a long time, and they started making this annual trip to Maple Hill, and this was their second year of doing it, and they wanted trophy discs. And so they came up with a logo and artwork and everything, and got a bunch of glow discs and had them sent to me. And it was 10 discs. 9 of them I made, like, basically a stencil in the middle. They were glow discs, and they didn't want a bunch of mud going on. They wanted them to be good functional glow discs. But I ended up putting glue bed halo, like took a halo stencil or a halo rim stencil and did the different colors of the rainbow. And then one was the trophy disc. And whoever ended up, like, they played 3 rounds over the course of the weekend, and whoever finished first got to take home the prize disc. And I thought that was a really cool thing to get a hold of, to be asked to, provide the trophies for, and the guys all liked it. Let me think. Other weird. I had someone message me. They want them and their significant other like to go to Waffle House and eat waffles, and they wanted a disc that looked like the plate that they use at Waffle House with the little S's, the little wrapping S's around the edge, and they wanted it to look like a waffle with a bite taken out of it. I'm like, that's cool.
Interesting.
I can dig that.
Yeah.
I like specialized things, so.
Absolutely. That's awesome that you got to do all that stuff. So if you had to start disc dyeing and you know what you know now, is there anything that you would do differently?
I would be better organized about, like, whenever I experiment with things, it's so important to take pictures of beds whenever you're experimenting with new variables and things that you're unsure about, and keep notes, like keep a little notebook and jot down. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Memento, but like things, like go back and look at that every day. And there's certain fundamental truths to disc dyeing, and remember those things. And I mentioned about longer set times before, but I feel like I struggled with it a little bit as a new dyer, like wanting to pull things early, but it didn't take me long after letting something sit for a few days and seeing how vivid it looks coming out of the bed to realize, okay, it's worth the wait. Sit and be patient. And you got to have somebody to share your excitement with, because otherwise you just kind of keep it all bottled up inside. I mean, and if that's all you need, that's fine. But there's a different aspect of joy that comes with being able to share things about what you've learned and what you've created to somebody else that's interested as well.
Do you have any other local dyers near you?
Let's see. There's a guy that I met about a month and a half ago, and it just so happens that he mostly does Floetrol beds, and he gets much better results than I do. But aside from him, I don't know. Now, whenever I was up in Michigan and first learning how to dye discs, I was right in Jaybird's backyard. And if people don't know who Jaybird is, he's the OG disc dyer. He's the first guy figuring out how to do this stuff. And for years, he did all of the factory dyes for Innova and Discraft and Dynamic, like all those those sloppy American flag dyes that you've seen came from him. And whenever I first started breaking into a side hustle, started hitting up locals like, hey, check out these dye discs. They're like, I'm loyal to Jaybird. And, I can respect that. And he does a lot for the local community. And he's been dyeing for, I believe, like 20 some years. So, I never got to meet him. I unfortunately did not get to, I wanted to, but he's kind of a recluse at the point that I got into disc dyeing, and he is on his way out. Like, I don't know if he did. I was told through the grapevine he retired last year. And I never got to meet him, but he was the closest disc dyer I had in my backyard. And then Justin Larson of JL Dyes, who does those incredible spin dies. Yeah, he was right in my backyard whenever I first started selling discs for Great Lakes. I'd go in the shop, and he had his discs there before I had mine there.
Are there any other shout outs that you'd like to give to other dyers and or other dyers that you really like their work?
Oh, gosh. So first and foremost would definitely have to be Chase of Greasy Dyes. He was who sparked this within me, and like, I need to learn how to do this. And then Keith Limpa, he was he put up with so many questions from me and so many other people in the community, and he was always so incredibly patient and answered my questions. And even if I didn't get it the first time, he was so kind to share what I would consider to be trade secrets. The work that he does is just absolutely incredible, and he's so unselfish about. He wants other people to be able to match him. He wants other people to do their best work. And as I learned how to do stencils, who better to learn from? That dude just does absolutely insane work. And so yeah, T Diddy. He should have probably been my second shout out, because he was the person that Chase was the one that made me think I want to do this. T Diddy's the guy that made me think I can do this. Chris Hannis of Daddy Mac Dies, Howie Kocher of Change Your Die Disc Golf. There's Jeff Darrow of Darrow's Dies. There's a big group chat of a bunch of us that it started out as a couple years ago. We were going to just do a disc dyeing group Zoom's disc dyeing session. Ended up turning into the cast of people, a lot of the people at the first Dye Academy at DDO. Oh yeah, that's another person, Jeff Beatty, Dye Academy. He's one of the first people that really believed in me and was like, you do incredible work, and I want you to come show other people how to do this. And he's the reason I even went to DDO. Like I mentioned, I think I mentioned before, I'm filthy casual at heart, but I figured, well, hey, if I'm going to go to DDO, why not be in a tournament? And I succeeded my goal of not finishing last. And I know there's so many people that I can't think of right off the top of my head, because there's been so many people that have messaged me. Like, after I kind of discovered the magic of clear glue beds, I wrote a guide that I posted on Reddit, and it got quite popular. And then I still get occasionally people message me and ask me questions based on stuff around that guide. But just the Disc Golf Dyers page in general on Facebook, honestly, that's the biggest thing that would keep me from leaving Facebook altogether, because it's just that place can be such a shit show. But God, that group is such a wealth of knowledge, and people that there's a whole lot of people there that bear it all and share because they want the community to be able to raise their game as well. And they honestly don't have to. There's some people that are onto some really magical stuff that not just anybody can do because they want to. And they're so helpful in doing what they can to make the tide rise for all boats.
Very cool, and some great shout outs. I know it's hard because there's so many people that you just can't think of, and
really
you feel bad for not.
And I'm sure after I finish here, there will be somebody that pops in my mind. Why did I give them a specific shout out? Right.
Is there anything else that you would like to talk about dyeing specific? If not, we'll go on to a personal note.
Oh, dyeing specific stuff. So, one of my little hacks for people that like to play around with lotion beds. One of the most important things that I've had with having good results from a lotion bed is using a mix of Floetrol and lotion for my base. Whenever I first started getting into lotion beds, I noticed you're fighting the dome of the disc, and like, you got to figure out how deep your bed needs to be. And even if you use just straight lotion, it's thicker than it really needs to be, especially if you have a domey disc. And then I noticed some of the patterns were really smushed in the center and then not so much around the outside edge. But then I thought, well, what if I make something a little bit thinner so that it just the weight of the disc takes it down flush. And so if it's a flatter disc, you don't need as much Floetrol. But if it's a very domey disc, you might need like 60% Floetrol to 40% lotion. Stir it up in a cup and pour that into your bed. And if it's really domey, make it a little bit runnier so that whenever you and be very there's another piece of advice. Whenever you're going to send a disc, it should be very tender and slow. Like you just whenever I will get right down eye level with bed and just kind of lay that thing down and just set it down very slowly. Like if I'm putting a disc into a bed that has a stencil on it, and like typically speaking, wherever the disc touches a glue bed first is where you're going to have bubbles a lot of the time. So I'll line up. Okay, this part that has the stencil still has vinyl on it. Make that where first contact is. If you have if I have a flat disc, or if you've dyed a berg and tried to put a berg into a bed and get the dreaded berg bubble, or a flat disc, sometimes it helps to push down on the underside of the disc like so. Daddy Mac did a really good video about how to avoid the berg bubble. Watch that. Let's see here.
You have some great tips and some stuff that even I'm learning, so that's awesome.
Good.
So, on more of a personal note, we'll get to know you a little bit better.
Okay.
So, the first segment that we'll do is Favorite Fave. First question I have is, what is your favorite band or song?
Favorite band? Probably Tool.
Nice.
That's kind of unfair because I feel like I have a very wide musical palette. I'm a metalhead at heart. That's kind of what I grew up on. I was born in '79, graduated high school in '97. If that gives you any idea, like Alice in Chains, Deftones, Tool, those are some of my favorites. But I also I'm not a huge country music fan, but I love Sturgill Simpson. Even if you don't like country music, go check him out. He is so incredibly good. Good songwriters are good songwriters. I don't care what genre it is. But I guess if I had to pick one band above all others, probably Tool, because I've seen them in concert a couple of times and their live show is just phenomenal. And it's so much more than just a concert. It's a complete sensory experience.
I saw them, I think for the first time just before the pandemic in 2019 at Halloween. And yes, amazing show. Even a harder question, do you have a favorite song by them?
Lateralis.
Nice.
Yeah. Especially the video. I told my wife, I want that song played at my funeral. It's just spiral out. Keep going.
There you go. What other metal bands do you like?
One of my more recent flavors has been Fit for an Autopsy. I'm typically not much. So I have to enter with caveat. I like melody. Like, I'm not a huge fan of the Cookie Monster vocal, but it has its place. There's a certain primal rawness to it that really appeals to me. And I went to go see the band Unearthed. They're a metalcore band at a real small venue in Detroit, and Fit for an Autopsy was opening up. I had never heard them, and they came out on stage, and they were just, from the immediate get-go, they were so tight, a really good band, and the music just grabbed you by the throat and demanded my attention, and I was just a huge fan immediately. Like, wow, that was incredible, and then I got to go see them 2 more times since then. Let's see, other metal band. Gojira. They're another one of my favorites. I love Clutch. I don't know if you can see I've seen them, 6 or 7 times now. They're just a fun band, especially to go see live because they play such diverse set lists. I hate it whenever a band goes on tour and every city gets the exact same set list. I mean, I understand why. The rehearsal's hard, but that's one of the things I admire so much about Clutch is they change their set list so much from night to night. Outside of the metal realm, Blind Melon is one of my all-time favorite bands. If the only song you've ever heard by them is No Rain, go check out the entire Nico album. It's just incredible. It's one of my favorite bands to listen to during the fall. There's certain bands that are sort of seasonal for me. Like Opeth is a wintertime band. I don't know why, but I just seem to listen to certain bands at different times.
So I know we can talk about music forever, but maybe at a later date we'll do a little music podcast. All right, moving on. Favorite food that you have?
Barbecue. I love me some barbecue. That was actually my first job whenever I was in high school. There's a world famous Corky's Barbecue out of Memphis, Tennessee. They had a satellite restaurant open up in my hometown, and I ended up working there for a couple of years and worked my way to the pit crew in the back where I was unloading shoulders and briskets and ribs every day. And I learned so much about barbecue from that job. And actually, I just asked my wife, she went to the store a while ago. I was like, pick up the pork butt. I want to smoke it this weekend. We'll have some pulled pork sandwiches. And so probably barbecue would be my favorite because there's a surprising amount of variety that you can do on barbecue and grilling, which a lot of people don't understand the subtle nuances between the two. But barbecue, low and slow, that's probably my favorite.
Boy, man, now I'm hungry for some barbecue.
Yeah, man.
Damn it.
It's always a good idea.
What is your favorite beverage?
Oh, ginger ale, a good ginger ale. So I've always enjoyed ginger ale, but back in late 90s, you ever heard of Stewart's? They make different flavored sodas. They're fairly widely commercially available. You'd see them in stores. But anyhow, I was up in Michigan at Interlochen Arts Academy. There was a summer camp that I went up there, and in that store they had a ginger beer, and I'd never had it before, and it was a life-changing experience. I don't know if you've ever had a really good ginger ale before. Oh my gosh, it's you cannot drink it. You could not drink it quickly because it's so spicy, and it was one of the things that I'd learned to take little sips of and just savor the flavor and the ginger, like the good ones, which there's not many of them. They just leave this nice burn in your throat. And they're also, if you have any tummy issues, ginger ale is great for helping calm an upset stomach.
Do you have a favorite brand of ginger ale?
Things that's available. So there's Maine Root, like the state Maine Root ginger beer. You can buy it on Amazon. It's not cheap, but God, it's so good. It's amazing stuff.
Interesting.
I'll buy a case of it every now and then and just keep them for a treat.
Interesting. I might have to try that. So
it's good stuff.
What other hobbies do you have besides disc golf and disc dyeing?
Oh, honestly, not a lot. I was a lot more interesting before I got old, but before I got into disc golfing, I was big into mountain biking. I like mountain biking. It's just it was a good it's a good way to get exercise, but unfortunately, being a big guy that likes to ride hard, I broke a lot of equipment and it got to be expensive. Disc golf's a little bit cheaper. Just live music. For the longest time, I was in wind ensembles and orchestras, and it was so much fun. I love doing stuff, anything to do with live music performance, whether I'm creating it or experiencing it. It's a huge part of my inner being. Like I always have music on whenever I'm dyeing discs. I always have music on in the car, and let me think. Barbecue. I mentioned that. Other hobbies, very casually. woodworking. My dad did a lot of woodworking whenever I was growing up. And a few years ago, my wife decided she wanted a nice bookcase. And I don't know if you've ever have you ever done any kind of woodworking or anything of the sort?
Yes, I remodeled my kitchen and redid drawers. And
Oh, okay.
drawers.
So you know how expensive lumber is.
Yes.
Oh my God. Yeah. So
especially during the pandemic.
Yeah. Well, this was before the pandemic that I made this bookshelf. But even then, it was. I was like, "What kind of wood do you want?" Poplar. Okay, let's go get it. And then I do the math and figure out how many boards I need to buy. And we're like, this little project turned into $700 really quick. It's like, do we really need to have poplar shells? There's going to be books sitting on them. Let's just make those pine. It'll be cheaper.
Yes.
But, just the outdoors in general. I like to go camping, backpacking. I used to live in northern Arkansas up by the Buffalo National River. Have you ever heard of it by chance?
I think so.
So if you ever find yourself in Arkansas and you're not happy that you're there, but if you're in the northern part, go check out the Buffalo National River. It's one of 2 national rivers in the United States. It's like 130 some miles, completely wild, no water management. If you get a lot of rain, it floods. If it hasn't rained, then it's too low to float in the summertime. Beautiful scenery. I used to, when I lived up there, I'd spend a lot of time out backpacking, and I was in Boy Scouts whenever I was a kid. That was where my love of all of that stuff came from. Got into going camping like whenever I was in high school. There was a 50-miler trip that we did over a week. We did like 32 miles in a canoe over a couple of days, and then got out and resupplied, and then hiked another 20 some miles. And it was a highlight of my life,
nice.
Like going through the Buffalo Wilderness. It's fun times. So that's what every now and then, like a couple of times a year, I just need to completely disconnect from the whole world and go disappear for a few days. And yeah, and the family likes to go too.
Yeah, no, I like the outdoors too, and that's it's nice once in a while just to disconnect because you need that.
Yes. Yeah, being able to just put the phone away and not worry about what time it is and enjoy life.
All right, next section that I have for you. If you had to pick 3 discs to use for the rest of your life to play any course, what would those 3 discs be?
If you would ask me a month ago, I'd have a more steady answer. So I'm a old noodle arm. Like I'm never going to be a bomber. I've just come to grips with that. And I don't have much of a forehand to speak with. I can do more of approach shots and whatnot with a forehand, and I can competently forehand drive. But I love my flippy discs, and I would have said a Castoplast fault. It also depends on the conditions. But if I had to pick, I guess I should probably pick something more overstable because that's more versatile. That was actually one of that tournament at DDO. There's nothing to teach you quickly. You need to learn a forehand. Like, okay, well, I'm a lefty backhand thrower that needs to turn left, and I've got a headwind in my face, and every disc that I throw that's understable, crash and burn. That was where it dawned on me, like, okay, you have to develop a competent forehand. But then the Castoplast Falk, I realized it's one of those weird anomalies that gets more overstable as it beats in rather than more flippy. It's weird. It's really weird. And that's honestly the thing that makes me, keeps me from picking that disc as my driver, default driver. But I guess I'll go with it because I still have one in my bag. But I'm currently using a Thought Space Athletics Ethos Mantra in that spot. And that doesn't do that weird thing where it gets more overstable as it beats in. A West Side Anvil. I don't know if you've ever thrown one of those. Oh, God, that was a game changer for me. I was bagging a zone in that slot until Justin Larson actually, he sent me one of those to dye for him. And I was like, I love how this feels. It's like perfectly angular and flat, and it feels so good in my hand, and it's so beefy. And you can do so many different things with it. So, yeah, I'm going to go with the Castplast Falk, West Side Anvil, and the Castplast Berg is my putter. Now, it's not my putting putter, but that disc is just a cheat code. Like it,
Yeah.
I don't know if you throw one, but like on windy days, that's my security blanket. Whenever it's windy, I putt with my Berg, and even on non-windy days, that's my approach disc. If I'm just going straight at the basket, because I can just gun it and it just and sits down.
Well, that was a good 3 choices. So now going forward, that's all you can use ever. So there you go.
Oh God, my fairway drivers.
Next section, Lee Perfect Hole. Has there been a favorite disc course and or hole that you've played?
Favorite course would probably have to be Flip City. It's one of those courses. I think the last time I checked, it was rated something like number 6 in the world. It's a private course. It's been around forever. It's probably the most famous course in Michigan, and I'm a filthy casual with a noodle arm. Like if I'm there to go score well, it's not going to be a fun time. But God, it's just a fun course. So many hills and elevation changes and tricky baskets and death putts, and it's just a fun place to go. Fun vibe. And though apparently I need to go play Eagles Crossing, that's about 2 hours from where I live. I haven't made it up there yet, but everyone tells me, "Oh man, you got to go play that course. It's so much fun." And so I guess that's going to have to be next on my list. But my favorite course to play would have to be Fallisburg. It's outside of Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's just super fun course. It was 45 minutes from my house, but I didn't care. I would drive there a couple of times a week to go play that course, and it's just so much fun. It's favorite hole? I don't know. I don't remember if it's 13 or 14, but one of them is a super high. The tee pad is very elevated, and the basket's way down there, and there's lots of trees, and there's lines through it, and it's a touch shot. It's not a power shot. And whenever you just thread one through the trees, and it just feels so good. I think it's hole 13 or 14. I don't remember for sure.
Do you have any courses that are on your bucket list that you want to play?
Oh, gosh. So I just mentioned Eagles Crossing, and apparently Harmony Bend is also not too far away from Eagles Crossing. So I have my plan. I want to devote a whole weekend to it, and go up there on a Friday night, get up Saturday morning, go play one, then go back to camp, go the next day, go play the other. Anytime I find myself traveling, I try to stop and make time to play a course. Because there's been so many cool courses that I've gotten to just random stops and, check out UDisc and find the stuff that's rated really highly. Some of the courses up in St. Louis that I've gotten to play since coming here, like there's Jefferson Barracks. That's also a lot of fun. Great park style course. And then they just built a companion course to it that goes all through the woods, and it's brutal. They call it the bunker, and there's a sign hanging up, "Abandon all hope ye who enter here." And it's one of those courses, like I scored an 8 over on it, and I felt really good about that score. Like that, there were some shots I made to pull that out. But yeah.
Next section, dream date. If you had to pick one pro disc golfer to play around with and hang out, who would that be?
I guess I would have to say Ezra Adderholm, because I dyed some discs for him, and he was such a delight to work with, like to communicate with. He seems like just such a decent guy. I'm not gonna go on some rant. I'm not gonna go on a big rant, but there's some pros that are kind of dismissive of they want disc dyers to do work for them, but they sure don't give us very many shout outs. but he was he specifically wanted a titanium nuke, and I went on a group and found a specific disc for him from a person that didn't want it, and he told, well, I'll give it to Ezra, but would you ask him to make a video throwing it? And I forget exactly what he wanted him to say, but I asked Ezra to do it, and he did it. And I would love to meet him someday. He seems like a really cool dude. If not him, Calvin, just because he seems just so chill. I know how frustrated I can get, but he just seems like he's cold as ice and nothing bothers him. And that's kind of how I try to be in life. Even keel, not too high, not too low. Take everything in stride. I think it'd be interesting to get a closer look at him.
Those are great choices, and I feel like I'm the same way as well, just even stride. So every time I think of Ezra, I just think of beans.
Yes. Yeah, I saw somebody do a Popeye themed die for him, and it made me laugh.
Nice. Bryan, where can people find your work?
So you can follow my main profile that I channel most of my work to is my Instagram, Pipedreamer79. You can just message me there to talk to me about custom work or anything of the sort. If you go to Pipedreamercustoms.com, that will take you to my shop. I don't make a whole lot of stuff like stock dies. I've been trying to move myself more towards doing mostly commission work, like because if people are going to spend good money on a die disc, they want it on exactly the disc that they want, and that I try to facilitate that the best I can. But I do put stuff up for sale on my website, so you can come up to my storefront there, Pipedreamercustoms.com.
So please go check out his work, give his page likes, and if you like his work, buy something.
Yeah, I'd be happy to hook you up.
Yeah. So again, I greatly appreciate you being on the podcast, taking time out of your day. And I've honestly learned a lot, and you were a pleasure to have. So,
well, thanks a lot for having me, Dave. I appreciate it.
Yes. Until next time, we'll see you guys later. Take care. Bye.
Take it easy.